Welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us in today. My name is Sandra Arana and I work with the Career Center. You will notice that on our chat, we are joined by Kalini Coleman, my amazing colleague. She will be taking any of your questions, comments, so please feel free to jot them down, Q&A, any questions that you may have, or if you want to use the chat function for that as well, more than welcome to do that. As you know, we are recording the session, so the session will be available to you all after the fact. If any of your classmates weren't able to make it in today, they'll definitely be able to see this recording at a later time. So without further ado, I just want to go ahead and introduce our guest today. I'm pretty excited, as you know, we've been working with a range of different professionals coming in and really talking about the various different industries that you all are interested in. And so today we have Angela Sierra. She's an attorney at the California Department of Justice, Office of the Attorney General. And she's been working there for a little bit over 30 years, right? And so we're excited to have her, and I'm gonna have her tell us a little bit about her and her background, and you know, in a little bit we'll go ahead and take some questions. But Angela, welcome, and please share a little bit more about your adventures.
Great. Well, thank you, Sandra, and thank you, Kalini, for arranging this. And hello to all our participants. It's really great to be here. I understand that most, if not all of you, are interested in learning about potential careers in the law, you know, maybe possibly considering applying to law school. And I think it's really great that you're attending this and having this conversation with us, because I think it's just really vitally important to just talk to as many people as you can who have been in the practice of law. There's so many different areas of the law. There's so many other, you know, both subject matter areas, types of offices. I've worked with the state of California in the Attorney General's office all my career since graduating from law school. You know, but many attorneys work in private law firms. A lot of attorneys work for advocacy organizations like the ACLU. Other attorneys may work for companies or other state agencies where they're doing what we call in-house counsel, where they're just advising companies or their agencies. So I think the more you can learn about the different areas, the better as you're considering possibly pursuing a career in the law. My background, I grew up in LA. My family, my brother and sister were first generation not graduate students, but college students. So we were the first in our family to go to college. We didn't know anybody in our family that was a lawyer. So, you know, I really didn't have like a lot of people, and, you know, to guide me through. I kind of learned a lot as I was doing it. And I just know looking back that the one thing I would have changed is, you know, at the time I was very shy, but if I hadn't been as shy, just to reach out and try to connect with as many people that were pursuing careers in law to kind of learn about it before actually going into it. Luckily, it worked out for me and I ended up really loving it, but you know, some others don't, or end up in the wrong field of law. So the more you can find out earlier on, the better, I think. So I wanted to talk a little bit this afternoon about the different types of work you can do if you are working in an agency like the California Department of Justice or other government entities, and give you kind of an overview of that. And then maybe after like 10 minutes or so, we can open up to questions that you may have, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions, and also give you some resources where you can look for possible internships that may be available while you're an undergrad or as a new grad, or even, you know, jobs within the state of California. So there's some good websites that I want to make sure that you're aware of moving forward. So anyway, let me talk a little bit about the California Department of Justice. It is an agency that basically we represent, the attorneys in that office represent basically the state of California as a whole, represent state agencies, represent state officials, and represents our residents kind of collectively. And I'll give you some examples of that. The head of our agency is the state attorney general, who is currently Javier Becerra, and he is an elected official. The state attorney general, the residents of California vote every 4 years for the attorney general, and he is currently in office as the head of the California Department of Justice. And there are about 1,000 attorneys employed by our office. We have offices in Sacramento, Los Angeles, San Diego, Fresno, Oakland, and San Francisco. And the 1,000 attorneys in our office are divided up primarily in 3 divisions of our office. And in my career, over 30 years there, I've worked in 2 of those divisions. One of the 3 is called our civil division. And that's where I began. Straight out of law school, I started working in our civil division that has 9 different sections within it. Primarily, most of the attorneys in that section represent state agencies and state officials like the governor or the different heads of agencies. Most often when those agencies or officials are being sued, we serve as the attorneys for the state in what we call litigation. And litigation is when you've been sued, and then you're going to be in court, and you are going to be doing the work before a case goes to trial. It may be providing information to the party that has sued you, and what we call discovery, providing documents and information. Learning about your client's perspective on the case, doing research about the law that governs whatever legal principle is involved, learning about the facts, and then eventually either going to trial in a superior court or a federal district court where you're putting on witnesses, or you are arguing what we call motions, points of law to a judge or a jury, and then having a trial in that court. And then depending on who prevails, you may go to the next level, which we call our appellate courts, where you're arguing primarily, usually it's points of law before a panel of 3 judges. So that division is doing a lot of that type of work. You also are very engaged with settling cases, maybe before a case goes to trial, as you're learning about your case, working with the other side on learning about their case, and then negotiating. Most times you make an attempt to see if there is a settlement that can be reached. And so a lot of the work is negotiation with the other side and working out a settlement. So I did that for 15 years. Before giving some examples of some of those cases, I want to talk about some other attorneys in our civil division. There's other units that are really focused on what we call licensing matters. And those attorneys are working for state boards that license, for example, healthcare professionals like doctors or nurses, or other types of professionals like contractors, or any type of work in California, or most type of work in California that requires a license. That license is being overseen by a state board. And then if an individual, let's say a doctor, has engaged in practices that are unlawful, then that board can seek to revoke a license or take some kind of action against that license. And if that professional wants to resist that action, then that matter goes to what we call an administrative trial, which is before an administrative law judge. And the attorneys in my office will represent that board, and they will put on the evidence. They'll work with, for example, maybe investigators who had investigated that doctor, or other witnesses, maybe patients. They will put those individuals in an administrative trial on the stand, we will bring on experts in that area. For example, maybe there's some practice, some medical practice that's in dispute as whether a doctor should have been pursuing that or not. Put on those experts. And then the doctor's attorney will put on their evidence, and an administrative law judge will make a decision. And if one of the parties is unhappy with that decision, that can go to another court hearing where our attorneys will defend that action or explain to a judge why we think that result was incorrect. So we have a fair amount of attorneys in our office who are doing that type of very important work. So I worked in our civil division for 15 years. I started with really small cases, a lot of them administrative cases, where I got the ability to learn my skills in putting witnesses on the stand, cross-examining witnesses, learning how to research points of law on smaller cases, and eventually was able to, build up on the types of cases I was able to take the lead on, and little by little was in charge of larger and larger cases. The attorneys in that division also represent the state of California when state laws are being challenged, and that is very interesting work as well. Every year our California legislature passes new laws, and some of those are challenged almost immediately, and a court will have to decide if those laws that our state legislature passed, are they constitutional or not? Or are there other problems with the laws? One recent example is California passed the California Values Act, in which California made a decision that the state was not going to allow local law enforcement, like, LAPD or other law enforcement agencies, to engage in immigration enforcement. That if immigration enforcement was going to occur, that was going to need to be done by the federal government. The state of California did not want our law enforcement engaged in that work, that we wanted them engaged on public safety and the priorities of the state. So the federal government sued California over that law, claiming that we did not have a right to do that. And so our attorneys represented the state of California in defending that law. And we were successful in that. Just recently, the U.S. Supreme Court came out with a decision in the state of California's favor, that we did, yes, have a right to pass that law. So there's a ton of work in that division, which is fascinating. You have the opportunity to help guide your clients, in cases in which maybe they weren't correct. Their, policies or practices, weren't right. And so, as you're working through a case, if that becomes evident, you can help them settle a case. You can help them change their practices. And you can also just put together, the best argument that they have, and to the end of justice will, prevail, and, we will end up with a decision from a court if we cannot settle a case, and then move forward. So it was always very satisfying work to me, and I learned so much about the different areas the state of California is involved in, which is fascinating, that there's, in almost anything you can think of, the state of California has some role in. And if you love the state as much as I do, we are in a fantastic state, you're really trying to help California move forward with the policies that we have, and that if things need to be changed, help make that change. Another of the three divisions that we have is Public Rights Division. That was a division I was in for about 15 years, and then I ended up heading the entire division. And that division has 11 sections in it, and it primarily, what it does is it is what we call a plaintiff side attorney. So in the civil division, we're working what we say defense side, where we're defending the state if it's being challenged. The public rights, most of our attorneys are what we call plaintiffs. We are seeing areas that need to be, or issues that need to be rectified, whether it be conduct by a business or conduct by a local government or by the federal government in the areas, for example, civil rights, antitrust, consumers, environment, corporate practices. And what we do in that division is we may be getting complaints about, let's say, a company. And we realized we're starting to get a lot of complaints. We don't represent one individual in California. We would be representing, if we bring an action, like all of California, that this activity by this company is hurting Californians as a whole. So we typically are looking for cases where we can make a big impact. And because we are not allowed, we are just, by how our law is structured, to represent an individual. If an individual has his own grievance against a company, we can't do that. But we can rectify a practice generally. And so then this area of our office, we call much of it's discretionary work, and where the Attorney General has discretion to give us permission to pursue a case. And so a lot of our work is trying to decide, we're learning about a problem, or we're hearing from advocates there's a problem, or individual consumers or individual in our community telling us there's a problem. And then we will do the work in that division of doing maybe some preliminary look at it, and then asking the Attorney General, doing a workup of what the law is in this area, why we think this is an issue that we should be involved in, what are the resources we are going to need. And then we make a presentation to the Attorney General to ask, we need his authority to proceed, whether we're going to investigate. And we have what we call subpoena powers, where we can issue a subpoena to an entity, to a business or a local government, saying, we are commanding you to provide documents and information about this issue. And but we need authority and from the Attorney General to do that. So many of our attorneys are involved in investigating those type of matters once we have the okay from the Attorney General. And after we do our investigations, we report to the Attorney General, and then we'll make a recommendation. So based on this, investigation, we believe, yes, we think that we should pursue an action against the entity, or no. What we've learned is no, we don't actually think that there's a basis for us to be involved. If we think that there is a basis to be involved, we would need the Attorney General's permission then to file a lawsuit against that entity, and then go to court. And those same attorneys would then go and be the attorneys in court, suing that entity, getting more information, and then proceeding in court with witnesses and their legal arguments. So that area of the law is also very, very exciting and rewarding. The third area is our criminal law division. We have a very large criminal law division. Most of the attorneys in that division are handling cases that come after a local district attorney or a local city attorney has brought a criminal case against an individual, or it could be a company, I suppose, but usually individual. And if that prosecution at the local level has been successful and somebody has been convicted, that individual has the due process rights, has a constitutional right to appeal that. And when that happens, that goes to like the next court, which is our court of appeal, for example. It would be a panel of judges. Often where the issue there is a point of law. Was the law properly applied? Was something done during the trial that was improper, for example? Our office would be the attorneys handling that case at that point and going forward. So that's a lot of the work that our attorneys in that division are doing, is what we call appellate work. A lot of it is writing a brief for the panel of judges, and they're looking at the whole record of what happened at the trial and calling the facts that came out of the trial, then describing what the law is and outlining the law for the court, and then combining the facts and law. And then there will be an oral argument for those attorneys to go in before the panel of judges and arguing the case. There are a few units within our criminal law division that do handle criminal trials. We have attorneys who handle what we call medical fraud cases, and we have attorneys who are dealing with and looking into issues of elder abuse or elder fraud. Some attorneys who are looking into financial fraud. And then we have special prosecutions on some matters where it seems like of a statewide importance. There may be an issue that's maybe it's really not for one local district attorney. Maybe there are some practices that are happening across many counties that it might be more appropriate for our office to bring that criminal case. Or there may be criminal cases in which a local district attorney has what we call conflict of interest. Let's say maybe a witness would be a employee that district attorney's office. Sometimes those cases, our office then would handle the prosecution. So those are the primary three divisions of our office. We also have an office of our Solicitor General who handles a lot of our U.S. Supreme Court matters, and they are doing appellate work at that level, and they'll work very closely with the divisions in our office who had the case before it came to the U.S. Supreme Court. So they work on a team with them. And we also have what we call an opinion unit, where other officials can ask the state of California a question of law, our office a question of law that has been not settled. And for example, how a law should be properly interpreted. We have an opinion unit who they just focus on that type of work. They're not litigating at all. They're doing research, and they are analyzing a law as to how it should be interpreted or applied, and will come out with an opinion, a written opinion that then will be published for anybody in the state to be able to have access to. And while it doesn't, while courts don't have to accept it, if a case came in the future about that issue, that would not bind a court and how they would apply that law, but it could have influence on the court on how at least our office interprets it. So, that in a nutshell, at a very high level, is a type of work that we do. What I find what's fantastic about our office is that people have been there that become experts in areas. And then there's also people like myself that did different things through our career. So I did defense work, I did employment law, I did breach of contract law, I did a lot of work then as a plaintiff with disability rights and civil rights, police practices. And then as a chief, I got to learn about environmental law and did so many different things. Other people like to have started in one area and stick with it and become experts. And so you have this amazing group of people to work with that have so much expertise and just experience and a lot of passion for what they do. It is really, can be very, very satisfying. I think you'll find, very similar experiences with people who work for city attorney's offices or county council or district attorney's offices. So I would just really encourage you to, if you meet people in whatever setting, to, you can ask for informational interviews or ask for somebody to have a short call to find out about their area. And then, as well as, talking to folks who work for private law firms or advocacy organizations, because there's really the one beautiful thing about practicing law, there's just so many different ways to do it. Some people like being in court. Some people like advising people. Some people like to do more of the writing. There is usually a niche for almost everybody. And you can make a difference in any area that you practice. You can make an impact in any area, whether it's, directly working on, direct services and helping an individual. For example, we do a lot of immigration work in our office, not helping an individual get, work on their application, but it's more immigration or immigrant rights. Like part of our office, we have attorneys who are, for example, reviewing the conditions at federal immigration facilities so that we can shed a light and people can understand what's going on there. But then, you can work for an advocacy organization and providing those direct services. Or like had I done earlier, you can work on the defense side and you can make an impact by helping guide agencies, bringing your perspective. We need diversity of thought and experience and background in all these areas. So I have learned in my career that I really feel like I have made an impact, a positive impact, and all the different kinds of work that I did. Some is when I was probably more junior, probably wasn't as direct, but yet, I was learning my skills and I was making an impact by just being a representative and kind of saying like, well, this is how I view this particular issue, which is important. So, with that, I would say is, I want to give you some of the references, resources that we have in our office. We do have externships and internships. Unfortunately, they're unpaid. They're not paid. But sometimes people are able to do those part-time while they're also working, on a part-time paid job somewhere else. Or there may even be sometimes possibilities with classes to get credit, while they're taking a class and doing some hours as a extern. So the website for that, I know Sandra's also going to email it to you, is www.oag.ca.gov. That's the Office of Attorney General. And you will see where you can click on careers, and then you will see the link to click on externships and internships. Also in careers for our job vacancies, you will see there are jobs for student assistants. Not as many right now. I don't know if there's any in Los Angeles right now, but it's something to keep looking at. I know there are some, I believe, in Sacramento. And then also a lot of state agencies do hire, recent grads. And so the place to look for those jobs is at our California Human Resources website, and it's www.calhr.ca.gov. So I would just encourage you to take a look at those websites as you're thinking about, because you may want some experience, working in a law setting of some sort. I don't think it's, absolutely necessary always for everybody to have that experience, but it may be helpful to work in a setting where some policy work is being done or legal work is being done, to see if that is something that you think would appeal to you. So with that, I will open it up to questions. If anybody has any, I'd be happy to answer those.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Angela. Yes, I mean, you gave us quite a bit of food for thought. But one thing that I want to say that I gathered from what you shared was that there was a lot of growth
Yes.
that occurred in you as an individual within your career. So you didn't really fully jump into it knowing I am going to do this and only do this, and that's what it'll be. That there's some fluidity in there, and that allowed you to grow and learn about various aspects of law.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
So you share a little bit about, is that something that you just, you knew I'm going to go in here and I'm going to just give it and see what I learn and see what happens, or was it something that just kind of happened? So I know, maybe some of our students may want to hear that out.
Yeah. Okay. No, it's for me, and again, I say, don't do as I did, but part of it, yes, maybe, but I really didn't know. I mean, I went to law school. I wanted to do some, I eventually knew I wanted to be doing something where I can make an impact and public service related, but I really didn't know what that looked like, to be honest. And most of the people in my law school class were going to be working for law firms. And so I did work for a law firm at my second year of law school in the summer. And I was going to go work for that law firm, but it didn't necessarily for me, and I might have liked it more than I thought I was going to, but I really still was very ambivalent about it. And then it really was somebody from the Department of Justice came to my law school class my third year and spoke. And, what she was saying, it just appealed to me so much. And to be very honest, I'd never even heard of this office, and it just wasn't anything I'd ever heard about or thought about. But she just seemed, she had been also like a long-term person there and made it sound so interesting. And I just really felt like I just really connected with her, at least in my mind, and thought, I really would love to be like her one day. And now we still are connected, I mean, she was really the reason I went to the office. And so I looked into it, and then I met somebody who had interned there, and they just said, oh, the people are there so wonderful, you would love it. And so I thought, okay. So I applied, and when you apply for an office, a government office, it can be very difficult because there's a whole process you have to go through, and you don't hear for a while. You don't just get an offer like at a firm where they can just give you an offer. You have to go through a long process, get on a list, and then wait for interviews. So I didn't actually get an interview till like toward the end of my third year. And I was thinking I was really interested in constitutional law issues. But I wasn't really sure, like, who does that or where do you do that? And then I got this interview for what is our government law section or civil division. And I was offered the job, and to be very honest, and I hate to admit it, but I still wasn't really clear what they did. when I got the offer. But I was just so thrilled to get an offer. And I just figured, you know what? They just seem really interesting. The office is big. I'm sure, I could, find my way and do something else if this doesn't work out. And I took it. And I am a big believer in following your instincts, and it was unorthodox because, I felt like the more orthodox role at that time in the 80s, was to go to a law firm for a while. And I still think that can be a really wonderful thing. But I did this, and it just turned out to be really great. And I just, what I learned is that you can learn something in any kind of job, in any kind of case I had. I learned a skill. I learned, I was very shy as a young attorney, and I really kind of learned to, build up my confidence. And, working with people, it was just the right kind of environment for me. And some of the cases, didn't necessarily seem like off the charts exciting. But, once you get into a case, you'll be fascinated that you realize how complicated almost any case is once you really start digging in and you start questioning is that really, how do I put that witness on the stand? Or how do I really, make sure that these are the right questions for this witness, or what really is, the best way to approach this case. So my feeling is that, if there's an opportunity and it's intriguing to you, and even though it's not exactly what you think you want to do, you may really want to consider taking it and just learning from it and meeting people. And so it worked out really well for me. I mean, there were times, where things I would be, had cases that were very stressful, or cases where I really had a lot to learn, and that was very challenging for me. You get through it. And I just look back, and I'm glad I had the different experiences, and I'm glad that I got to be both a defense attorney and a plaintiff's attorney. I just following my path, I ended up doing things that I feel really good about. And I just really feel like I had a very, very satisfying career. And somehow, like I said, I don't necessarily do it like I did, had no more than I did, but yet I think following your gut is the way to go, and being open, to other areas that maybe you won't find your dream job. If some folks I know really want to do like a certain area of law, like they only want to do civil rights work, for example. Sometimes, people, the way they get there is through another channel. I mean, I work with this fantastic attorney who she worked for a big law firm first for like 5 or 6 years doing corporate law. She paid off her student loans, and now she is in the civil rights enforcement section, and she is pursuing work that I know for her is extremely important and satisfying. But she was able to get a job because she came in with just amazing skills that she learned just by pursuing, another opportunity.
Yeah, and I think that easily sort of puts us into this question that one of our attendees asked, what experience did you have prior to getting that first opportunity, within the Department of Justice? And to go along that, positions are competitive, and so I think you mentioned a little bit about skill set, but what experiences you feel sort of helped you move into that first opportunity?
Okay. It's what I had done. I mean, mine, what I had done one summer, I had worked at a law firm, which and I do think it is good for people to, like, if in law schools, usually you work your first year, your first summer, and your second summer. And I think it is really good to get like those different experiences, so that you're able to draw, upon those as you are interviewing for your next job. So I had worked for a law firm, so I had that experience. And I do think, that as an attorney, you're going to be in situations where you have your opposing counsel. And so having that experience of kind of understanding where they're coming from, it's going to be an opposing counsel that works for a law firm. So having had that experience, you are going to just have more knowledge of kind of what they're, kind of what is driving them. or how best to communicate with them, kind of the pressures that they may be having from their own clients. So I think being able to show that you have some different experiences. I had worked right after college in a management training program for a retailer, and so I was, had some skills working for like a large organization. And I think any job that, recent grads have, you really can draw upon where, you had some type of leadership role. You were put in charge of, a particular issue or program or aspect of, whatever that employer was. I think that can be very important to someone who is looking at potentially hiring you, to show that, people trusted you. You had some responsibilities, and it doesn't have to be in a legal office. It can be in any kind of setting. We also are looking for often, do we see, the leadership qualities? Because of course, when someone's brand new, they're not going to have a ton of experience, but leadership qualities, were you in what we call like mock trial or moot court in law school, or undergrad, there may be, you may be involved with something that's in addition to your classes, or you were in, what organizations, and did you have, any either leadership positions in those organizations, or if not, was there an aspect of some program that organization did that you kind of took the lead on? Many of our sections and, our office are looking for folks who, show a demonstrated passion for public service. And even if that wasn't like your full-time job, that you were, pursuing, you needed to pay the bills, right? You were doing something else, but often people have been volunteering somewhere, and so that also, you're developing skills as a volunteer, and you're also showing that, no, I am, this is demonstrated passion, interest in what I'm doing, because I think any employer, when they're looking at a potential candidate, they want someone who's going to be really engaged with their office, and really wanting to be there. And, the investment goes both ways. So, in skill sets, I would say when you are taking your classes, in college, it can be in any subject, but the more that you can get experience in writing, the better, and that you can talk about that, and it doesn't have to be a pre-law class. It can be, take a class that interests you, any topic, but it'd be great at that course if you have an opportunity to write a paper or write essays and really be open to constructive criticism. That was something for me, my writing, I really had to work on a lot. And it really is something that as an attorney, you do a lot of. You need to communicate in writing, whether it's a memo, just clear writing, or whether it's a brief to a court. But more you can do it as an undergrad and get comfortable with it, the better. But I do think it's important to pick classes that you actually are interested in, and don't feel like it has to be a pre-law class. I don't think that is as necessary. So hopefully, I think that's, in general, there's so many ways to.
Absolutely, and I'm really appreciative that you mentioned, specifically that writing skill, right? We see quite a few folks that go into law having an undergrad degree in English, right? And
definitely,
there's definitely a lot of a mesh between the two. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And we do have another question. Our attendee here mentions you have had many rewarding experiences within your career. If you were to share maybe one, what is the one that stands out the most at the moment that maybe made you realize that law was the right choice, that you were in the right place?
Yeah, okay. There were several along the way. But the one, I think, for me, the culmination for me that means the most to me is and this was more as a manager. So, toward the last years in my office, I managed, like I was managing 400 attorneys or overseeing the work of 400 attorneys. So I didn't get to be involved in like the nitty gritty of like, I'm not doing the research or I'm not in the court, arguing. But I got to be part of the management team over our office's challenge against the federal administration in protecting the DACA program. And so we filed a lawsuit against the federal government because, as many of you know, that the Trump administration made an attempt to stop the DACA program. And so our office, on behalf of the state of California, filed a lawsuit challenging that and arguing that that was a violation of law, in the manner that the administration did that. And so it's a very, very meaningful case to me. We had a very large team of people on it, but I got to be involved in, overseeing and working with the attorneys on it and trying to best explain our position and the legal theories we were going to bring, involved in giving updates to the Attorney General, who was very involved in this case. And just representing the so many DACA recipients on this and knowing how important it was to them and how much it impacted our state to protect that program. And so it's, if the case finally, just most recently, ended with, a very good decision from the U.S. Supreme Court. And I was able to be at the U.S. Supreme Court when it was being argued. And it was the most moving experience that I have personally had as an attorney, even though, again, I wasn't the person on the front line. I was the person as like part of this team. But I just feel so grateful to have had that opportunity. So I just, to me, that is like the pinnacle of it and very meaningful to me. And, and everybody's going to have a different case for them. It really is, or a different point in time. But I would never have imagined in a million years, to be very honest, that I would get to be in that position, and just to work with people I just really enjoy working with people who are just so passionate and so good at what they do. It was just very exciting and very moving to be part of that.
And I'm very grateful that you were a part of that. Yes, that was a very, very wonderful day when we heard that news. Yeah. Affecting so many different folks all across the nation. So, yeah. I think one of the things that I've heard quite a bit, and I know that we're coming to time, but a lot of the opportunities that we see out there, a lot of the times are for students who are already within, a law school and know that this is sort of the pathway that they're following. As an undergrad student, we have a pre-law club on our campus, right? And so they're very involved in wanting to do more and wanting to get connected and network. What would be, any last thoughts, any last suggestions and encouragement for our undergrad students specifically to maybe dive into that can sort of give them an edge going into some opportunities that maybe necessarily were not for undergrads, maybe for other folks, but maybe a little bit about that if you can share.
Okay, yes. I mean, I think one would be, again, the more that you reach out, and can reach out to people who are practicing law, I think there's two things that come of it. One is you just learn a lot, and often folks will know of either a maybe position or some volunteer work or something that you can be involved in, or there's fellowships or some, organizations that, you may feel like, you should be applying for this program. This is a program for people who are thinking of going to law school. For example, there is one right now I'm involved in as a mentor called LEAP. And Sandra, I'll give you the website, but they bring fellows on, every year. This is the first year, so this is their first cohort. But there's organizations like that, so I think talking to people will open the door to opportunities and resources. And then, I think also, looking for, it may just be volunteering, a few hours, a month, it maybe it's an organization, Some of you, maybe just have different skills that you can, can be very helpful to an organization that has a law aspect. A lot of advocacy organizations need people helping with interviewing clients. If you have language skills, if you are bilingual, that can be a huge asset. And then, you can be involved in, in helping an organization, and it could be just maybe a couple hours a month. So I think that would be another thing. And then, I would suggest that people, once you can start going back to court. Right now, everything is virtual, but once you can start going back to court, you can spend a day at a courthouse and you can go in and watch trials, or you can go to the Court of Appeal, and you can watch an oral argument. And I just think all of that will both help you, kind of understand what the practice of law is like, and then also I think show, prospective law schools and employers like how committed you are.
Thank you. That, you mentioned something very important in that we have COVID, right? And so a lot of folks have had to be very innovative in how to do, right, what before you were able to do in person. Right. I love this idea of maybe shadowing or going to a courthouse once it's all open. And then just kind of getting a sense of what it feels like, what it would be like, what it looks like. I think it's so important to have that. And I don't see any other questions right now coming up, but I know that we were at time, and so I just wanted to say thank you so much, Angela, for being with us, for providing, resources. We'll follow up with the other resource for LEAP that you mentioned, but just for your time and sharing, your trajectory. We really appreciate that. And students, please be on the lookout. There are opportunities that are coming up that would be available. And as Angela mentioned, do a little bit of that research, get yourself out there, whether that be through informational interviewing. I know that you mentioned that you would be available or open if students would like to connect. So I will go ahead and share with you all right now before we step out Angela's email. Please feel free to connect. And what would be the best way? Through email or?
Through email is the best. Yeah, email would be the best. And then, and if there is like an area of the law that you're interested in, I may be able to connect you with somebody, from our office that practices in that area, to speak to.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, attendees. Thank you all so much for being with us. As I mentioned, this recording will be available, so if you missed anything, I know I was trying to make notes on my end over here too, but if you missed anything, it'll be available on our YouTube channel very soon.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest.